Unsolved.
The JonBenet Ramsey case. The essence of crime scene staging. The point of view of this video is that the JonBenet crime scene was staged. And so we're going to look at the ransom note, the garrote noose, the paintbrush handle, the white nylon cord, the fact that her wrists were tied and the hair in the knot, the black duct tape. Even though it's not part of the staging, I'm going to mention the white blanket and the pink Barbie nightgown. And then, yes, even the assault in this video is assumed that it was staged. However, before I start with the staging, I wanted to point out two facts about the case. One is this hair tie in JonBenet's hair. You can see here it says in the autopsy report that she had a cloth hair tie with a blue elastic band on it. This photograph was taken at Fleet White's house Christmas night. And now looking at the crime scene photograph, you can see that she has that same hair tie in her hair. So it's just odd that when she went to bed, if she went to bed, that they didn't remove, Patsy didn't remove that hair tie from her hair. The second thing that I wanted to point out is the pajama top or top that JonBenet was wearing when she got up on Christmas morning is not the same top that she wore to Fleet and Priscilla White's house. Here's a photograph of the shirt that JonBenet wore to Fleet White's house. And she must have had a vest over top of this shirt. And here in the pathologist report, it describes JonBenet's clothing. So the ransom note is definitely part of the staging. So I circled in blue a few things that have to do with staging. It says a small foreign faction. Well, we pretty much know that there was no small foreign faction. And then the two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you. And then it ends with victory SBTC, like some kind of terrorist organization. And then it has the make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. Now, that's not really staging necessarily, but it could be so that the person could use the suitcase to get JonBenet's dead body out of the house. Okay, and then you have circled in red the two misspellings, business and possession. And so that's part of the staging, I believe, because the ransom note looks like it was written by an educated person, and business is a pretty simple word to spell correctly. And then I circled in green these kind of references to movies. I advise you to be rested. If we catch you talking to a stray dog, she dies. Don't try to grow a brain. This is kind of what the author of the ransom note imagined what a ransom note would sound like. Now, if JonBenet was hit in the head and her skull was fractured, and she just laid there, not moving and dormant, and the perpetrator didn't know what to do and was in a dilemma. And so maybe the ransom note was written to stage what happened and the concept of a garrote. And they made this garrote, or what appears to look like a garrote, with the noose and JonBenet was strangled to death. Now, when they thought of a garrote, they needed a wooden handle. And so where would one get that? Well, how about a paintbrush? You could break that and make yourself a good handle for the garrote. Now, to make a garrote, you would need some rope or wire, and it looks like nothing like that was available. So this nylon string was used. And now what follows is a short demonstration of nylon rope or string. Okay, here we have a string of nylon cord or rope, but it's thicker than what was used with JonBenet. So I'm just gonna cut a piece first if I can. Yeah, so I thought it's not gonna be able to cut it. Now don't get there we go. Alright, and then you can see the end there, and then this one was melted because it's nylon. And then if you cut it, these big scissors I got, so it's ready. But you can see in the JonBenet case that the nylon is thinner. It's much thinner than this rope, and this rope isn't that thick. Now we really get into the staging evidence because they're so phony. So if you look at this cord tied around JonBenet's wrists, it's on the outside of the clothing. So first, like, JonBenet's not going to let you tie her wrists. So she was obviously out. And second, if she was awake in her, so the first thing you would do would be to pull your sleeve out from underneath the cord. And then most likely you could just pull that right over your hand. So this wasn't restricting anybody. I mean, in real kidnappings, people have their hands completely tied tight, and they still, oftentimes with great effort and time, remove their bindings. Now, regarding the hair and the knot and the garrote, I can't really put my finger on it or explain it real clear, but to me, this looks so phony, the hair and the knot, that occurred during this garroting. So I'll try to explain a few reasons why, but to me, it's just, looking at it, it's obviously fake. The hair was placed in there to make it look like it happened during the garroting. But look how long this string is from the back of her neck to that wooden stick. How can the hair be there? Her hair's long enough. That's not the issue. The issue is when you're pulling that, you're like 1.5 feet away from her head. So how did you pull her hair 1.5 feet out? It just doesn't make any sense. And also, it looks like the hair is inside the knot. So how'd that happen? They were wrapping that around the stick and making sure that it was connected to the piece of wood and her hair was in there? So here's a photograph of the sticky side of the black duct tape. And we're going to go to an illustration now. Okay, a roll of black duct tape. So I'll pull off a section here and then tear it. And then here we have black duct tape. And then on the other side, it's gray. And then we'll put it on this piece of paper. And there it is. Now the issue with the duct tape regarding staging is, now if she was alive, JonBenet would have done many things to try to remove the tape from her mouth, like yanking her wrists and hands out of the nylon string, like opening and closing her mouth, like using her tongue to move the tape away from her mouth, like throwing up. And it's obvious that none of these things were done because there was no scarring around her mouth, there wasn't adhesive around her lips, and she didn't throw up. Now this last item, the white blanket and the pink Barbie nightgown, look like the opposite of staging, but I think they're important to note. So the perpetrator moved JonBenet's body from the boiler room into the wine cellar and placed this white blanket around JonBenet. Now maybe there's an explanation for this. Maybe the body was planned to be moved again, and that's why this was done. Or maybe it was just giving up. And you have to consider that this person spent a great amount of time, 20 minutes or more, writing the ransom note, making this garrote, doing all these things. So at some point, they're just going to tire out. Now, the Ramsey's window pane in the basement was already broken. John Ramsey did that in the summer. And there wasn't a whole bunch of glass all over on the floor or inside the window well. But part of the staging could have been placing the suitcase underneath the window to make it look like an intruder had either entered or exited the Ramsey's house from the basement. Now the assault, I didn't really fairly consider that this could have been part of the staging. JonBenet was already dead, so the perpetrator could have done this just to make it look like some kind of sex crime. And that's why there was the evidence of sexual assault. Now this last photograph that I want to show you, which is quite gruesome, so if you don't want to see it, it'll only be on the screen for a short period of time. But Linda Arndt said that she smelled decay. And if JonBenet died at 1 o'clock and she was found at 1 o'clock, she was lying there for 12 hours without her blood flowing. And so this is what it looks like. And it's gruesome. And I think it helps clarify the reality of what JonBenet's body condition was in when she was found. Yes, it is possible that an intruder could have staged the crime scene, but it definitely narrows down who that person could be. Maybe it's a neighbor, and so they want to distance the crime from themselves. Or maybe it's a close friend or close person to the Ramseys, and they want to distance this crime away from themselves. However, seriously now, it really comes down to either two people. John, who knew the window was broken and somehow the suitcase just happened to be placed underneath that broken window. And he knows nothing about knots. When he was in the Navy, when he owns a sailboat, he's been in sailboat races. And John is the only one with the real motive to kill JonBenet. If he was either molesting her or he was annoyed with how much money and attention that she was receiving. Or it comes down to the person who opened the door at 6 a.m. in the morning with her hair and makeup on, wearing the same clothes that she had on the night before. Now I have to admit, after creating this video, I really think that Patsy might have done this. First, the ransom note. A foreign faction. Patsy went to the Atlanta Olympics where the terrorist bomb happened and it was blamed on Richard Jewell. And so it seems logical to me that she would blame this on some terrorist organization. Second, when she's making this garrote to go in line with this terrorist act, she needed a wooden handle. And so whoever did this, they went right to a paintbrush and broke the paintbrush handle to make the garrote. Who's gonna first think, I need a piece of wood. Where am I gonna get it? Oh, it's in my paintbrush tote. Then you have the hair and the knot, and then you have the cord lightly tied around JonBenet's wrist. She's dead. Why not just tie it super tight on her wrist? Some reason there was a hesitancy to do that. And lastly, who's going to assault their daughter's dead body and make it look like a sexual attack? That's what confused me. But it does seem possible that Patsy might do this just to get away with this. And it was just kind of out of my thought process. But it is possible. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. Hey, I'm not supposed to say if I enjoyed it or not, but I did. I found this interesting, and it definitely affected my opinion about who might have murdered JonBenet Ramsey.